Picture this. It's 2026. Inflation has eaten your paycheck alive, groceries cost double what they did 3 years ago, and you finally get into your car to drive to work. You step on the gas pedal and suddenly, from deep inside that engine bay, you hear it. Took, 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 took. A rhythmic, metallic, terrifying knock that syncs perfectly with your RPMs. Your stomach drops to the floor. Every gearhead forum, every YouTube short, every mechanic friend you've ever had has told you the same thing about that sound. Rod knock, spun bearing, dead engine. You limp the car, white-knuckled, to the nearest dealership, praying it's something small. The service advisor doesn't even let you finish the sentence. He just nods slowly, with that practiced look of fake sympathy, and walks out to the bay. 10 minutes later, he comes back with a clipboard and a number that makes your knees buckle. $4,000, sometimes 6, sometimes 8. Full engine replacement, complete bottom end rebuild. Sir, your rods are slapping the crankshaft. There's nothing we can do. The engine is destroyed. And here's the part that's going to make you sick to your stomach. In the overwhelming majority of cases I've seen come through my shop in the last 5 years, that engine is completely, perfectly, mechanically fine. The rod knock lie is the single most profitable diagnostic scam running in Western service bays right now, and it's built entirely on acoustic manipulation. The real culprit, in countless cases, is a single bolt. One bolt, not inside the engine, outside of it. A bolt you can reach and tighten in under 15 minutes through a 2-inch rubber inspection cap on the bottom of your transmission. Total cost of repair, $0. Now, the dealerships making billions off your engine panic want you to think internal acoustics require an engineering degree to understand. They don't. It's basic harmonic resonance and loose fasteners. But as always, I'm sharing this for educational purposes, as a matter of historical mechanical observation, so you can make informed decisions when somebody hands you an $8,000 quote for a problem that doesn't exist. Let's talk about why this scam works so well, and you have to understand the engineering to understand why they get away with it. Inside your engine block, you have a rotating assembly. Crankshaft, connecting rods, pistons. The rods are connected to the crankshaft through bearings, and those bearings live in a constant film of pressurized oil. A real rod knock happens when that oil film fails, the bearing wears down to the metal, and the rod literally hammers itself against the crankshaft journal hundreds of times per second. That is a catastrophic failure. But here's what the Stealership doesn't want you to know. Japanese engine architecture, specifically the heavy-duty Toyota, Lexus, and Honda bottom ends built from the late 90s through today, use forged steel crankshafts and forged rods with bearing tolerances that are absurdly overbuilt. These engines were designed by engineers who assumed somebody in Bangkok or Lagos was going to run them on dirty oil for 300,000 miles without a single change. They don't spin bearings under normal operation. They just don't. It takes either total oil starvation, severe overheating, or extreme abuse to actually destroy a forged Japanese bottom end. So when somebody rolls into a service bay with a perfectly maintained 2015 Camry or a Lexus RX 350, and the advisor says, "Your rods are knocking," the mechanical probability of that being true is statistically near zero. Now look at where that sound is actually coming from. Bolt your engine to your automatic transmission, and what connects them? A thin, stamped steel disc called the flexplate. The flexplate is not a flywheel. A manual transmission has a heavy flywheel. An automatic has this thin, flexible plate, hence the name, and its only job is to transmit rotational torque from the crankshaft into the torque converter, which is the fluid coupling that actually drives your transmission. The flex plate is bolted to the back of the crankshaft on one side, and on the other side, it's bolted to the torque converter using anywhere from 3 to 6 high-torque bolts, depending on the model. Those bolts live inside the bell housing, which is the bell-shaped metal cavity where the transmission meets the engine, and here's the critical detail. Those torque converter bolts experience constant, brutal rotational vibration, thousands of cycles per minute, year after year. Over time, even with factory thread locker, one of those bolts can back itself out by a fraction of a millimeter. That's all it takes. If you've ever paid a 4-figure repair bill for something that turned out to be nothing, hit that like button right now. The algorithm is actively suppressing this kind of content because it costs the service industry real money when people learn this stuff. And drop a comment below. Tell me, has a mechanic ever looked you dead in the eye and told you your engine was completely finished? I want to read every single story. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell because the auto manufacturing lobby has been pressuring platforms hard to bury independent mechanical education. We need to stay connected before they pull this kind of information offline entirely. Let me walk you through exactly how the scam unfolds in the service bay, because once you see the pattern, you'll never get caught by it again. You bring the car in with a metallic knock under acceleration. The technician hooks up the diagnostic scanner. There are no fault codes, because a loose torque converter bolt does not throw a check engine light. So already the computer is telling you nothing is electronically wrong. The tech then opens the hood, has the customer rev the engine in park, and listens. Here's the move. He puts a stethoscope on the valve cover, nods his head gravely, and says, "Yeah, that's coming from inside the block." But of course it sounds like it's coming from inside the block. The entire transmission bell housing is bolted directly to the back of the engine. Sound travels through metal at thousands of meters per second. A bolt knocking against the bell housing transmits vibration directly into the engine block itself, making the entire assembly resonate. The stethoscope can't tell you the source. It can only tell you the structure is vibrating. The service advisor then writes up the quote, "engine replacement," or "we recommend a complete bottom-end inspection," which means pulling the engine, disassembling it, billing you 30 to 40 hours of labor at $180 an hour, plus a new short block, plus gaskets, plus fluids, plus the inevitable upsells. By the time you sign the paperwork, you're looking at $4,000 to $8,000 for a problem that, on the actual repair order in the back of the shop, the senior tech could have fixed in 15 minutes. And this isn't conspiracy, this is the deliberate business model. Diagnostic ambiguity equals maximum billing. The longer they can keep you uncertain about the real cause, the more expensive the recommended repair becomes. Master Japanese mechanics, especially the old school guys trained in JDM shops, will tell you that the very first thing you check when you hear a knock that sounds like rod knock on a healthy engine is the flex plate and the torque converter bolts. It's the first thing on the diagnostic ladder, not the last. Western dealerships skip that step entirely because there's no money in it. Now let's get into the actual physics of why a single loose bolt can mimic a catastrophic engine failure so perfectly. This is harmonic resonance, and it's the most beautiful and brutal trick in rotational mechanics. When that torque converter bolt backs out by even 1 millimeter of thread engagement, you've created what engineers call a free play impact zone. The flex plate is spinning at engine RPM, which at idle is around 700 revolutions per minute, and at cruise can hit 2,000 to 3,000 revolutions per minute. Every single rotation, that loose bolt or the slightly cracked flex plate around it slams against the rigid metal housing. At 2,000 revolutions per minute, that's 33 impacts per second. The human ear interprets impacts above 20 per second as a continuous metallic tone, which is exactly the frequency range of a real rod knock. But here's where the bell housing makes it worse. The bell housing is essentially a hollow metal drum. It's a curved, enclosed steel chamber. When the loose bolt impacts the inside of that chamber, the sound is amplified and resonated through the housing, exactly like striking the inside of a bell. That's literally why it's called a bell housing. The acoustic signature gets shaped, amplified, and projected outward through the transmission case and into the engine block via direct mechanical coupling. From outside the car, with the hood open, every diagnostic instinct tells you the noise is coming from the lower end of the engine. It isn't. It's coming from a hollow steel drum 2 feet behind the engine, broadcasting its impact through the entire drivetrain. The distinguishing feature, and this is what every master tech knows, is that flex plate rattle changes with transmission load. Put the car in neutral, and the converter load changes, the noise often softens or disappears. Real rod knock does not care what gear you're in. It knocks because the bearing is dead. That single diagnostic test, neutral versus drive, is enough to separate a 15-minute fix from an $8,000 fraud. So let's talk about how you actually check this, and I want to be very clear, this is educational. This is historical observation of what Japanese master mechanics have done for decades in their own driveways. First, you put the car on jack stands. Never ever work under a car held up only by a hydraulic jack. Jack stands rated for your vehicle weight, both sides, frame rails, period. Pull the wheel chocks behind the rear tires if it's front-wheel drive. Now you slide underneath and you look at the bottom of the transmission bell housing. On almost every Toyota, Lexus, Honda, and most domestic automatics, you'll find a small rectangular or oval rubber plug, usually about 2 inches wide. That's the inspection cover. Some have a metal cover with 2 bolts. Pop it off. With the cover removed, you can see the back of the flex plate and the heads of the torque converter bolts. Have a helper bump the starter, just a tap, with the ignition off and the spark plugs disconnected for safety so the engine rotates manually. You can also rotate the crank with a socket on the front pulley bolt. As the flex plate rotates, each torque converter bolt will come into view through that inspection window. Take a torque wrench with the correct socket, usually a 14mm or 17mm depending on the platform, and check each bolt to factory spec which on most Toyota applications is between 30 and 40 foot-pounds. If you find one bolt that turns even a quarter turn before clicking the torque wrench, that is your knock. Tighten all of them in sequence, rotating the crank to expose each one. Put the cover back on, start the car. The dead engine sound that was about to cost you $4,000 is gone, completely silent. A $0 cheat code that bypassed a $4,000 catastrophic replacement. Here's the final warning, and you need to internalize this before the next time somebody quotes you for a major engine repair. In 2026, with parts inflation where it is, with labor rates pushing $200 an hour, the entire Stealership service model depends on customers panicking at acoustic symptoms they don't understand. They are betting on your fear. They are betting that the metallic knocking sound will make you sign anything to make it stop. Don't sign. Get a second opinion from an independent shop, preferably one that specializes in Japanese vehicles. Ask them, point blank, did you check the flexplate and torque converter bolts before recommending engine replacement? If they say no, walk out. If you found this useful, share it with one person you know who drives a Toyota, a Honda, a Lexus, anything with an automatic transmission and over 100,000 miles. This information is the difference between $4,000 in their pocket and $0 out of yours. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next